about yo, talk about me, espresso. No! Hello you guys, I'm Bella and welcome back to Girls Gone Scholar, where unlike the women of the 1800s, I actually can have an opinion. Now before we jump into our 1800 topic today, I want to take 1 minute to play a little game. I'm going to show you guys an image and you have to think of the first thing that comes to mind. Ready, set. Alright, now that you had time to pinpoint your thoughts, let's see what others had to say about that. What do you think of when you see this symbol?
I think a hospital.
Although these observations are correct, they don't reveal the deeper meaning behind the symbol. At first sight, this is the well-known mark for hospitals and anything medical. The symbol is called caduceus, but take away the wings and the other snake, you get a reference to Moses' bronze serpent from the Old Testament. Basically, the story goes, the Israelites spoke out against God, so he sent snakes to bite and kill them. When they complained to Moses, he prayed to God, and the story continues with, the Lord said to Moses, make a snake and put it on a pole. Anyone who's bitten can see it and live. So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole, and when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. All in all, that's why caduceus symbol is used to represent hospitals. Now that's neat and all, but I am far off topic. When anyone looks at the symbols, no one sees the story of Moses. But if I had to think of someone who would connect this symbol to God, it would have to be Walt Whitman. And I know what you're thinking. Bella, why would you say Walt Whitman? He doesn't even believe in any of that. Yes, I know, I did my research. This thought doesn't only come from the fact that he has a strongly arrogant personality, guessing that he always has to be different, but looking at this poem, Song of Myself, gives me a different perspective of his religious standpoint. Whitman says, I hear and behold God in every object, skipping down 2 lines. I see something of God each hour of the 24 and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face, in the glass, I find letters from God dropped in the streets, and everyone is signed by God. So if this man can see God in every hour of the day, he can see it in the logo on the back of an ambulance. At least that's what I imagine. Now, I know what you're thinking again. You're confused about how someone who doesn't believe in a higher power could write something so holy and uplifting. Well, I'm confused too. And that's why we're here. As many of you know, I am a Jesus freak, as they call it, and as I read these poems, I question how someone like myself, with such a strong connection to God, could relate to someone so non-religious. On that note, today we're going to focus on Whitman's biblically and transcendentally influenced concepts, and how I relate to his ideas towards human value and feelings towards the overall meaning of life. Before we jump into the what and the why of it all, let's talk about the who. Walt Whitman is an American poet, writer, and journalist known for his use of free verse. He has written dozens of poems ranging from all different kinds of concepts, ideas, themes. These themes include, but are not limited to, the mystery of life, self-supremacy, and spirituality. Although I'm going to touch base on all of these themes, I'm mainly zeroing in on spirituality. When it comes to really putting a label on Whitman's religious life, it's not an easy task. His arrogance mixed with his constantly changing beliefs creates a struggle to find out who he really is. Looking at Whitman's work, it's easy to see that he has a strong opinion and definitely some set values. These are connected back to his father. Whitman grew up with a hardworking American radical in the home. Much of his spiritual beliefs and independence from orthodoxy comes from his father. He was raised as a Quaker and was influenced by Thomas Paine and Elias Hicks with their idea of the inner light. Basically what I'm saying, Walt Whitman really believed in himself. And no, not the sense that he's going to reach for the stars and achieve his dreams, but more the idea that the meaning and importance of life lies within himself. As it says in Song of Myself 48, and nothing, not God, is greater than oneself. Now just in this poem, Song of Myself 48, Whitman has valued the importance of self, stating that oneself is more important than God, and then continues to say he sees God in everything, concluding that God created everything and is overall most powerful. He is very, very paradoxical. Now stay with me. This principle of self-importance leads me to believe that Walt Whitman could have been a lot more faithful than his poems and critics believe him to be. To exploit this belief, I want to get into one of my favorite Walt Whitman poems, A Child's Amaze. Now this poem not only deeply resonates with me, but it gives reader an opportunity to better know and understand who Whitman was. Silent and amazed, even when a little boy, I remember I heard the preacher every Sunday put God in his statements, as contending against some being or influence. Although there are only 4 lines in this poem, there is a lot to unpack. In the first line, Whitman makes use of the word silent. Silent in the sense that he is not talking, but he is listening. This immediately brings me back to the Bible. In Proverbs 18:13, it reads, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Along with James 1:19, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. Now take a second to process that, all right? So that is just one word. Let us keep going. After silence is and amazed. You know what being amazed is? Yup, one of the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, wonder and awe. Basically, that just means being blown away about what God has done and can do, or in other words, being amazed. Whitman continues on, even when a little boy. Beautiful line right there. Having a childlike joy when it comes to God is amazing. I'm not saying that's how it should be, but that's what it's like. Like, you know that feeling of nostalgia and how that feeling wraps around you like a warm blanket? That's what it feels like being close to God. And that's what it feels like understanding His Word and realizing that you are extremely loved by Him. The fact that Walt Whitman makes this childlike love connection is extremely heavily prevalent in the Bible and is one of the main reasons it grabbed my attention. I also made the connection between that line and Matthew 18:3, where he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like the little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." He continued on saying, "Remember I heard the preacher every Sunday put God in his statements." That line simply connects to the 4th commandment about keeping the Sabbath holy. This isn't a revolutionary statement, but it's a pretty big deal given that Whitman is non-religious, non-believing guy. Lastly, he ends with, as contending against some being or influence. Now, a big part of being a follower of God that most people don't realize is facing the fact that we have to believe in Satan to believe in God. The Bible makes it very well known that hell is real and so is the devil. It states that as followers we can't ignore Satan, but we have to realize what and who he is. Really what I'm trying to say is that Whitman recognized the ultimate power, which is, again, a big part of being a follower. He not only acknowledged the devil by saying some being, but also the concept of sin by saying or influence. All in all, this poem is drenched in what it means to be a Christian and what following and being loved by God is like. And it doesn't stop there. In order to get through some of my other favorite poems, we're going to do a rapid fire round. So, here we go. Number 1, in his poem, Oh Me, Oh Life, Whitman goes on about how he doesn't understand the meaning of life, sounding hopeless. He ends the poem with saying, "Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you will contribute a verse." I personally think that is such a beautiful line, concluding that everyone on earth has a purpose and that we are here for a reason. This reminds me of Psalm 139. Where it states that God knits us together in our mother's wombs, inferring that each of us and every single one of us was precisely made in his image and therefore here for a reason. Number 2, to him that was crucified. Whitman starts off this poem with an absolute bar. "Do not mind, because many sounding your name do not understand you." This directly sent me back to Proverbs 29:25. It is dangerous to be concerned with what others think of you, but if you trust in the Lord, you are safe. God says you don't have to worry about what other people think about you. They don't understand who you are. And Whitman says the same thing in To Him That Was Crucified. Side note, I'm going to save you the spiel and not mention the title. Lastly, number 3, in the year that trembled and reeled beneath me. He uses your to describe the possession of nature and the seasons. And of course, I'm going to say it's God, duh. But besides the use of your once, there's nothing really meaningful in this poem, just some unanswered questions. Which reminds me, every night I say a meaningless poem full of questions. That's called a prayer. Boom! And that's my rapid fire. Now, when I read these poems, I really like them, especially A Child's in Me, as I made all of these connections to my life, as well as just finding comfort in what was being said. Then I did my research, and was disappointed to find that Walt Whitman's religious standings were, well, non-existent. He knew of God, understood the concept, but didn't believe in him or follow any religion. The confusion is what led to my curiosity to find out who Walt Whitman was, why he thought these things, and why as a Christian related to them. Through articles, books, and maybe a prayer or two, I've come to a couple conclusions. First of all, while reading Walt Whitman's work, you have to keep an open mind, which I definitely struggle with as an opinionated Christian. While analyzing his work, I realized that religion is less about church and titles and more about beliefs and experiences, as stated in the study Tedious Walt. This idea complements the conclusion I've made regarding what I think Whitman's religious life entails. Basically, Whitman was ahead of his time, especially in the way he used a more doctrinal approach rather than following dogmas. Quick FYI, dogmas are the rituals the Bible says you have to follow, while doctrines are more of a tradition that Christians have created. Like a dogma would be keeping the Lord's Day holy, while a doctrine is going to church, because you can keep the Lord's Day holy in other ways. Besides the point, looking at the way Walt Whitman talks about God and how he describes his values, he worships more like a 2025, 21st century Christian. Nowadays, being Christian can be the same as the 1800s. going to church every day, constantly praying for hours, honoring the Eucharist every Sunday, and etc. But it can also be listening to a preacher every once in a while, listening to podcasts, sharing your love for God through social media, like me, the 16-year-old girl approach. Anyways, although Whitman might not have qualified as an 1800s Christian, he could be considered one today. This is why I think I relate to his writings, find comfort in his work, agree with his values, and understand his concepts. Not because I did my research and because my English teacher forced me to, but because he's a 16-year-old Christian girl. Well, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope I gave you something to ponder the next time you read Walt Whitman. See you next time. Okay, I'm gonna show you a picture. What do you think of when you see
Bye, that's fine.
Alright, what do you think of when you see this